welcome to another episode of the making of Pokemon Gemini. Hopefully this video will be a lot better quality than the other video. In the episode 2, I had a lot of trouble with recording and file conversion, but that should all be fixed. I'm now recording in my new office with a better computer, dual monitors, a better inline mic, so everything should be exceptional quality from now on. But back to the series. So in our last video, we worked on sound and music. We created this little sound manager, this sound manager here that handles sound effects and music and playing music and fading from one sound to the other and queuing up sound effects to be played in order. Anything you could think about that a Pokemon game might need to do with sound, we created this sound manager for it. So this episode, I'm going to work on something else that's more specific to Pokemon games, and that is regions, or areas. So when I say region, I don't mean like the Gemini region or the Unova region or whatever. What I mean is, when you are playing a Pokemon game and you walk, for example, from Pallet Town into Route 1, or Route 1 into Route 2 or whatever, every time you switch to another region, it pops up and tells you what region you're in. And that's actually very important, because when you catch a Pokemon, the Pokedex entry will tell you where you caught that Pokemon, which is important for Nuzlockers, but it's also just a nice little nod to tell you where where you met each Pokemon. But more importantly, the region determines what wild Pokemon will be encountered there. So, for example, you might find, and I'm completely making this up, but you might find Rattata on Route 1, but then you might find, I don't know, Giraffarigs on Route 10 or something, right? So the Pokemon that you can encounter on any route or in any area are determined by the area itself. So there are different ways to make that happen. So in GameMaker we have these rooms, and each room is basically a map or a level, and we could put each area in its own room and then have all the settings for that area in the room. There's one problem with that though, and that is that in GameMaker at least, you can only have one room loaded at a time. So if I'm in room demo, and then I switch over to room init, everything from room demo gets completely wiped. It's unloaded from memory, and it's stored in the actual like game files, but you can't display both rooms at the same time. And with a lot of areas in Pokemon, you need to be able to see both. For example, if I have Route 1 over here, and I have Pallet Town over here, when you're going from Route 1 to Pallet Town, you should be able to see both when you're close to the transition. And you can't do that if you separate them into different rooms. So I need a way to separate areas in the game that the game will know the area is different, but will actually be in the same room. And the whole game's not going to take place in one room. You can still split it up. For example, every time you have a transition, like a gatehouse or a cave, or anytime there's a transition where you enter a building or exit a building, or enter a cave and exit a cave, transitions like that, or even jump to a cutscene and jump back. Wherever there's a transition, we can use that to cover up a switch to a different room. So we don't need every area of the game to be in one room, but we do need some areas in the same room. So we need a way to separate them within the same room. So I've come up with a system that I think is going to work. I've tested it a little bit between episodes, but I haven't really had a chance to fully test it. So we're going to implement it together and see if it works. And the idea is we're going to use a tile-based approach. So if you don't know what tiles are, let's come here and add a new background. And I'm going to come into my documents, and I downloaded the Pokemon Essentials pack. This is for RPG Maker, which I'm not using, but it has a lot of graphics and audio and stuff from the Pokemon games. So for example, let's go into Tilesets, and we'll pick caves. So this is the cave tile set. So what you see here is a bunch of terrain and flooring, and let's see, yep, you can see the outsides of caves and things like that. And the way tile sets work is if I say this is a tile set, I think these are, nope, 16 by 16 looks right. Yeah, so I can pick any one of these little grid tiles and place them down in the room, and they'll be drawn there as though it's like part of the background. And so you can put them together. So if I take the corner here and the corner here, I can put as many of these edge pieces in between as possible to make it as big or as small as I want. And so you can mix and match, and this is how levels are built in a lot of games, and Pokemon is one of them. But here's the thing. Tiles are designed to be lightweight, so they don't have a lot of processing going on, they don't lag your game. What they do is they just draw themselves, and that's it. But we're going to use tiles for something a little more functional than that. We're also going to be using tiles eventually for the actual game and mapping everything out. We'll do that once we get more graphics. Probably at some point I'm going to be using these as temporary tiles until I get more graphics. But right now, for the regions and the areas, we're going to be using tiles more functionally. So let me show you what I mean. So first things first is I don't want this background in here. So I'm going to make a new background, and I'm going to call this region tiles, right? And I'm just going to create a new background, and I figure, let me see, transform. I figure we're probably not going to need more than, say, 10 areas per map, meaning you're not going to have 10 areas that are all loaded at once. And so, because of that, I'm going to make this 160 pixels by 16. And so what that means is we have 10 16 by 16 tiles here. And just for my own sanity, I'm going to make them all different colors. So let me do that quickly. We'll make this, I believe, 16 by 16 here is 4 of these little spots. So, oh, nope. Let's see. 1, 3, 4. Yep, these are 4 by 4. So 4 of these is 1 tile. So okay, so hopefully I remembered to speed through that, or that would be a really awkward clip. But what you can see here is we have 10 different tiles that are all different colors, and each of these tiles is going to represent one area in the map. Now keep in mind, there will be multiple maps, multiple rooms, and the same color might represent different areas in different rooms. The idea here is just that within a room, within one map, each of these will represent a different area, and so we can split up the areas that way. And so if we look and zoom out to full size, this is how big the tiles are, just 16 by 16 pixels. It could be any size, really. I just picked 16 by 16 because I feel like it's small enough to separate areas precisely in a Pokemon game, but also big enough that I don't have to worry about placing every little bit. So yeah, and also 16 by 16 is the default tile set size, so I'm just going to leave that. And cool, so we have region tiles. So now if I come into room demo and I put a tile set on, and I pick region tiles. Now, one thing that I need to keep in mind is what layer these on, because you can layer tiles on top of each other. But for the system to work, what we're going to be doing is checking which tile is underneath the player at the certain layer that these region tiles are going to be on. The tiles themselves are not actually going to be shown in the game. We're going to hide them, but they'll still be there so we can look for them. Oh, excuse me. So this is just layer, what is that, 100,000? 1, 2, 3. No, it's layer 1 million. Okay, so on layer 1 million, we have these tiles, and are these off? No, I think that's right. And so if we snap this grid to 16 by 16, the same size as our tiles, we can, for example, put a bunch of things in here, and I can just do this. So let's say this is one area, like so, and let's delete that one. And then we have another area that's right here, right? So you can do stuff like that, But the way that I'm going to be doing it, I think, is actually a little more efficient. So let's see. I forgot what I think it's this. Nope. I forgot what the hotkey for deleting is. All right, so I'm just going to do this. Oh, you know what? I'm just going to close this and don't save changes. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm only going to be setting the region as you pass from one region to another. And by doing that, I won't need to fill the entire region with tiles. So to make it easier on me to develop the map. So for example, let's say this right here is one region. And then this right here is another region. We could just do this, and I don't know, just a random shape here. So let's pretend that you can't move through here, right? And that, like say there's trees here blocking the way or something, and the only way through is through here. When you're in here, let's say region 1, and you pass through here, you're going to step over the red tile, and that's going to switch it to region 2. And it's going to stay on region 2 while you're in here until you walk out and step on the purple tile, and they'll switch it back to region 1. So by doing this, all I have to do is map out the borders of each region, and I don't have to fill in the inside, so it'll make it easier for me. So this is how I'm going to be mapping it. So now how is the game going to know what these tiles mean? And this is where we have to create a region manager. So what I'm going to do is create a new manager. So create an object under the managers tab, or sorry, managers folder. And I'm going to call this region manager. And I think that this is going to need to be callable. It's going to need to have methods that other objects can call from it and get information from and do things. For now, though, I don't think that we actually really need any kinds of methods for it. That might be a future thing. Right now, I think it can handle stuff on its own. So the idea here, and let's make sure it calls the callable parent. The idea here is that we're going to have a map that maps each of those tiles to a specific region. And the region itself will just be data about the region, so its name, wild Pokemon there, etc. And so the way it's going to know what tile is there, so these tiles, each one doesn't have like an ID, but they are all at a specific position in the background, and you can get the position of the tile in its background. So let's start off by having a region map, and there's 10 tiles, so that would be tiles 0 through 9. So we need 9 different regions in this, 9 different regions in this map. So let's create a map, and this will actually be a global map that we're just going to refill with the appropriate data, like clear it and fill new data in every time you switch to a different map. So this will have a global map, and actually what we're going to do is we're going to do this inside the room itself, so that when you go into a new map, the map is going to set all that data. So let's say we have global map, or sorry, global region map, just keep it clear, and that equals a new map, ds. Actually, how do we, so do we want to do this as a map or a list? Because if we do it as a list, we're not going to be able to give it special keys to look up information. It's just going to automatically be keys 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Which is fine because that's what we're using, right? Is region 0, 1 through, or sorry, region 0 through 9. So maybe we can do that. But if we do that, it's going to automatically number it, so maybe the code won't be as clear. And if we do a map, we can set the regions, the indexes ourselves. I'm going to go with a map for now. I might change it to a list later. But yeah, so we'll make a new map. And actually, we're going to be using a global map that we're just going to be refilling. So in the initialization, we're going to create that map. Global region map equals ds map create. And so initially it's going to be blank, but that's just going to create it in memory so that we can work on it in every room. So when this room starts, we're going to do ds map clear first. We're going to clear the data from the previous map, so global region map. And now we're going to have to add all of the regions. Now this is going to come from a file later, and in a future episode I'll talk about how I'm going to try and make this as data-driven as possible, which means have external files where I just kind of describe things and they get loaded in and the game processes them and figures out what to do with them. And I'm going to try to make regions do that as well. So regions in Pokemon at least. Maybe moves, though that might be harder. But for now, we haven't implemented anything to load in data, so we're just going to do this hard-coded to make sure it works. So we have a DS map. We have a map of regions, and we're going to clear it. And now we're going to create a new one. Or we're going to fill it up and create new regions. So for now, I'm just going to create 9 random regions. So we'll set some index to 0. Index is less than 10 because it's 0 to 9. And then increase index. And then we will do, so each region is going to need to be a map itself. So it'll have things like the name and the Pokemon and stuff. So we're going to do var region. And that's going to start out undefined. Actually, I think I can just do this. I don't think I have to initialize it. I think it automatically gets initialized as undefined. So that's fine. And then we're going to make region a new map. And then we're going to set region name equals region. And then we're just going to put the index. So it'll be region 0 through 9. So that'll tell us that for the name. In the actual game, obviously, we're going to be calling these different things like Route 17 or Celadon City or whatever, although it wouldn't be Celadon City, but you know, you get the point. But for now, we're just going to call it region 0 through 9. And then I think the actual Pokemon, the wild Pokemon, should actually also be a map because you don't just get one type of Pokemon, you get multiple types. So let's say we'll have a region map, or we'll have a region, we'll have a wild list, and then a wild mons. So I'll show you what I mean as I do this. So we'll have the wild list equals ds map create, and then we'll do wild, so we'll do wild mons equals list create, and in this case we're just going to have it be the names of Pokemon. Later on we're going to have it be another map where each Pokemon is like the Pokemon's name, their level, hold items or whatever, stuff like that. But for now it's just going to be the names of Pokemon. We're going to keep this simple and focus on the regions and not the Pokemon. That'll be in a later episode. So wild mons is a list of Pokemon. So now we will do here. We're just going to create random strings that aren't actual Pokemon names. So random 10-character strings. So var Pokename, and then Pokename plus equals character irandom range ord A ord Z. So what I just did was so ord gets the decimal value, because in computers, every character, every byte has a number associated with it. So this gets the number of A and the number of Z, and it picks a random number between those two. So a random number between A and Z, and then converts it back to a letter with ker, or however you pronounce that. I call it ker. But yeah, so it converts it back to a letter. So this will just pick a random letter from A to Z. It'll do it 10 times and add it to the end of the name, which will generate a random Pokemon name. So in our test, the wild mons are, there's only going to be one wild mon, which is this random Poke name, but obviously there will be actual Pokemon later. So now this is the wild mons in there, and now the wild list, what we're going to do is we're going to have this be something like grass, which is for tall grass, and in the actual, so here we'll do grass so the list of wild mons in the grass is this list we just created with the random name. And then in double grass, so for double battle grass, we'll do the same. And now in the actual game, each of these will probably be different because each type of terrain has different Pokemon in it. But for now, we're just going to use the same thing so we don't have to keep creating new lists. So wild list, cave equals wild mons. Wild list, what else, what other kind of terrain do we have where we can encounter Pokemon? So we have grass, double grass, cave, water, wild list. I guess the shore gives you different Pokemon than the water, doesn't it? I think it does, if I remember Pokemon correctly. So grass, double grass, cave, water, shore. I think that's it. I think those are the only types of terrain where you can encounter Pokemon in any of the games, isn't it? Let me know in the comments below if I missed anything, because once we get to adding these actual Pokemon lists, that's going to be important to make sure we get everything. But I think that's it. So now we know that in this region, in the grass, we have this Pokemon. In the double grass, we have this Pokemon. In caves, we have this Pokemon, etc. And they're all added to this wild list. And this wild list will be added to the region. So now we'll say the region wild battles equals wild list. So by doing this, we've added all the data about the region to this little map, right? We have the region's name, we have the Pokemon in each area, and all of that's stored in there. And so now all we have to do is add this region to the region map and associate it with the certain index. So 0 is one region, 1 is another region, 2 is another region, etc. So we have index. So now we just have to go, and it's called region map. So we just go global region map, and this is the index of our map, or sorry, of our region, and we pass in region. So that should do it. So this kind of thing, obviously with more accurate representations of Pokemon than just random names, but otherwise this kind of thing should be all we need to specify, what each region is in our region map. So now we need our region manager to look up that information based on where the player is in the tiles underneath. So we also don't want it to trigger every time you step on a tile, because for example, if I'm on here and I'm on pink region, which region was that? 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. So this is region 3 and this is region 0. So if I step on here, I'm in region 3. If I step over here, going into the red region, I don't want it to pop up and say region 3 again, and I don't want it to have to process all of the region information again, because I'm already in region 3. I only want it to pop up if it changed. And so for that, we need to make sure we know what region we're currently in. So current region starts out undefined. You know what? I think we can specify it as, do I want to have a default region, like region 0, and then just have it be, everywhere you can enter a map has a tile to reset it? No, I'm going to set it to undefined. And every time you, if you teleport to a map, for example, from going through a building or something, then I'm just going to have either that code will set current region, or else it'll have one of those tiles wherever you could land. Either way, because I don't want it to start off with a default region, because if something goes wrong, then you can end up where the game thinks you're in a region that you're not in. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to leave this as undefined. Make this persistent so that it stays throughout the game instead of being unloaded with the room. And then I think I'm going to do this in a step event. Oh, and then another thing is in the room start event right here, the region manager is going to hide those tiles so that we can't see them. And what did I say that was on? Layer 1 million. Right. So when the room starts, it's going to hide those tiles. That's tile layer hide 1 million. Hide layer 1 million. And that's all we have to do to make sure they don't show up. So that's fine. And then in the step event, this is where we're going to handle the region. So the step event runs every frame of the game. And sorry about that if you're one of those people that doesn't like cracking knuckles. Sorry, it's a habit. Anyway, we're going to have to see where the player is, and then check the tile underneath, and then see where that is in the background, and then look up the information in a map and do whatever. So we don't actually have a player yet, so we can't see what the player's position is. So instead, I'm going to set this to just use the mouse position as a fake player while we test. So, oops, Y is mouse Y. In other words, the region is going to be the region the mouse is in instead of the region the player's in until we actually have a player to look at. So we get that, and now we can look for the tile at layer 1 million below. So that's tile layer find depth 1 million 1 million, and then the X and the Y is the position we just stated. And if there is no tile there, because remember I'm only putting this around the border, so if there is no tile there, we don't want it to do anything. And if there's no tile, it's gonna say that the tile is gonna return -1. So if tile is great or does not equal -1, I should be able to do is greater than -1 or greater than or equal to 0 even. But just in case, I'm going to set it just to not equal -1. And if that happens, then we are on a region tile. So to actually get the region, we're going to do, say, region X, because remember what we're doing. We are using the X coordinate of these tiles on the background, so the horizontal displacement, this way, as the region ID. So this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, because there's 16 and 32 pixels off, right? So we need to get the X coordinate of the tile, and that's really easy to do. You just do tile get left, and then you pass in the tile, and that tells you how far off it is. So then region, I'm going to call this region ID, and then we're going to do region ID equals region ID div 16. So we're going to divide it by 16 because it's the number of pixels that it's offset, but each of these tiles is 16 pixels wide, so we have to divide by 16. And div here, so you might be used to seeing division in computing as that. And that is division, and that's fine. But I'm going to be using div. And the difference is div is integer division, which means it's going to divide And then if there's any remainder or if there's any decimal, any fractions, it's just going to completely discard those fractions. So in this case, it shouldn't matter because each of these is exactly 16 pixels apart, or at least should be if I did it right. But just in case we don't ever want this to even possibly have a fraction, because we're going to look it up in the map, and the map is not going to have any fractions as keys, so that would mess things up. So this way, it gets, sorry about that, mic drop. It gets the closest thing, which should generally be the right ID. So now we have the region ID, and now all we have to do is look it up in the map. So we can do region equals global region map, region ID. And now we want to, if for whatever reason the region doesn't exist in the region map, let's say we accidentally put a tile down that's not actually mapped to anything in this room, how do we want to handle that? I think we can just ignore it at that point. So we will only handle these if region or if is not undefined region. So if the region was found in the map, then we can get the data for it. And what is this? It's current region. So we just set if current region equals region. In other words, you were already in region 5, let's say, and now you've stepped on a region 5 tile. Nothing should happen. So we actually want to see if current region does not equal region. And actually, I want to kind of make this code a little more concise. So I'm going to add that here. If the region is not undefined and the region does not equal the current region, and then I can get rid of this and save myself some indentation. Oops. Save myself some indentation. So that means we've stepped into a new area. So we want to look up the new data. So we're going to store this. So we need somewhere to store it. So I'm going to call this region name, which is just nothing by default. And then if we've moved into a new area, then region name equals region name. And then we could also get the list of wild Pokemon battles, and we're going to need to do that eventually. So actually, let's just do let's do that now, even though we're not actually going to use the wild Pokemon battles for anything yet, just so that we have it ready for the future. We'll call it wild battles and start that off undefined as well. And then that's where we're going to store the list of wild battles for the region that we've just walked into. So wild battles equals region. What did I call it? Did I call it wild battles in the actual map? I don't remember. Yes, I did. Wild battles. So region wild battles. And then current region we set to this region. And so that should be fine. And then in the draw event, where we draw stuff to the screen, we're going to draw that current region, or sorry, the region name. So the region name starts out as nothing, so it's fine if we just draw it directly, because it's not undefined. So we're going to draw a string. Oh, sorry, it's draw text at 1010. This is just x, y coordinates and pixels from the top left. So it's just close to the end, close to the top left corner, and then we're going to draw the region name, and that should be good enough to test. So let's put where did I put it? Managers, region manager in the initial room, and it'll be with us throughout the game. Oh crap, I have this set to Steam Workshop. I didn't mean to do that. Uh, oh, as far as I know, there's no way to cancel a compilation once you've started. So we're just going to have to wait for this to finish compiling, and it magically worked. Yeah, I didn't realize it would work with Steam Workshop because I don't have Steam, but I guess I can compile for Steam Workshop, which is good to know. Anyway, I'm going to compile for Windows. This is interesting. This does not say. Oh, you know why? I have it set to not visible, so anything it's drawing is invisible. But also, I want to get rid of the battle menu for now, because we're done testing that for now, and we don't need that dialogue to pop up. But you did see that you couldn't see the tiles, so you didn't see all the region maps. The demo controller is still there? Oh, I have the demo controller in here, don't I? Resource loader, keyboard handler, settings, sound manager. Where's the demo controller? Oh, the demo. I deleted the wrong thing. Okay, so we're going to just put the region manager. The region manager is in the first room, and it's persistent, so we don't need to add it to the room. So this should work. So there you go, region 0, and then if I go slowly enough, region 3. 0, 3, 0, 3. So it knows that this is region 0 and this is region 3. So perfect. So if I were playing the game and pretend this mouse is, the actual player, and I were walking here, I'd be in region 3, and then I'd walk here and suddenly it would say, oh, region 0. So now what we want to test is we want to create some sort of little animation. Because right now it just constantly shows you where you are, and that's not how the Pokemon games work. So we want to create a fade in and fade out, or a drop down of some sort. So I think for now I'm going to do a drop down and then a fade out. So it'll drop down and then it'll fade out. And for that I'm going to have animation state, or animation stage, and it'll be -1 when it's not animating. And then animation timer, or, oh, no, wrong button. Don't want to delete everything. We'll actually call this animation offset. We'll start out at 0. So the offset is going to determine when it moves down, and then also it's going to determine when it fades out. So animation stage and animation offset is good, and it'll also time it between the dropping down and fading out. That delay between it should work. So what's going to happen is every time it switches to a new region, we're going to set animation stage to 0. And that's going to trigger it to start doing animations. And so how we're going to do this, so stage 0, if animation stage equals 0. Stage 0 is going to be the drop down stage of the animation. And so we're going to do, what did I call that? Animation offset, I think? Yeah, animation offset. So we're going to we're going to add to the animation offset I think yeah, we're going to add to the animation offset. And for now, I'm just going to do 1 pixel per step. And then we're going to draw the text, and we're going to use that animation offset as -32 plus animation offset. So the idea here is that when animation offset is 0, it's going to be drawing the text at -32 in the Y, which is above the top of the screen, so you're not going to see it. But as animation offset increases, it's actually going to drop down, because it'll be -32 plus like 10 is -22, so it's closer to the screen, and it's going to keep dropping down. But we actually want it to drop down to 10 pixels below, not just to 0. So we'll make this when it'll be 10 pixels below is at 42. So I'll make this negative 22, right? Because that's negative 32 plus 10, right, is negative 22. So that it can be 10 pixels offset. So 22, there. And then if animation offset is greater than or equal to 0, or sorry, greater than or equal to 32. So it'll go from 0 to 32, and when it's 32, it'll be drawn at 10 in the y-axis. So when that happens, we're done with the first drop-down phase. So we'll set animation offset to 0 and animation stage to 1. And then if animation stage equals 1, then this is going to be the waiting stage. So it's going to drop down, and then there'll be a slight delay before it fades out. So all we have to do here is just count how long the stage has been going on before we move to the next. So animation offset plus plus, or plus plus animation offset. Increase that, and then, I don't know, it's 30 frames per second, I think. I think that's what I set it to. So if it's 30 frames per second, I think 1 second is long enough. So actually, because of that, I'm going to set this to 20 and this to 30, so each stage will take 1 second. So then if animation offset is greater than or equal to 30, then we will go to the next stage. So first reset the animation offset, and then animation stage becomes stage 2, and stage 2 will be the fade out stage. So, and we also need to remember to draw the text at every stage, or else it will disappear. So the only difference is that here we know that it's at y equals 10, and we just keep it there constantly. We don't move it. And so then if animation stage equals 2, then we will fade out, and the way we'll do that is animation offset plus plus, or it starts out at 0. So in this case, we're actually going to add 0.05. And so what this is when you set the alpha value, that is the transparency of what you're drawing, it's between 0 and 1, where 0 is completely transparent and invisible, and 1 is completely opaque. So because it's between 0 and 1, we don't want to add like full 1 value each, 1 to the value each time, because that would just go beyond it, right? And we could do that and then like divide to scale or something, but no need for that. We're just going to add to the animation offset 0.05 each time, and we're going to take the inverse of that, so 1 minus that. So draw set alpha, 1 minus animation offset. And we're actually going to, just in case, we're going to store the current alpha and reset it later. So var o alpha, so original alpha, equals draw get alpha. And then when we're done, we got to remember to reset that back to the o alpha. Just in case something else is going to draw stuff while this is going on, we don't want to change the alpha value for it. Even though best coding practice is that if you're going to do something global like set the alpha, you do it immediately before you draw stuff. But just in case, I'm going to make sure it's all clean and self-contained. So now all we have to do, now that we've set the alpha value, the transparency, is just draw that text again, except this time it'll be drawn with the alpha set. And then when the animation offset is greater than or equal to 1, then the alpha will be 1 minus that, so it'll be 0. So it'll be completely transparent, and then we're done. So then we can set animation stage back to -1, so we're not animating, and then reset the animation offset. So this should be our code. So I'm just going to comment this a bit. So drop down stage of animation, or of region name animation. delay stage of region name animation, and fade out, fade out stage of region name animation. So now we have all the different parts of the animation, and this should work. So let's try it out. So when I go from one region into another, we should see the name drop down and then fade out. Okay, or we'll get, see that? That doesn't say animation. That's a typo. Where is this? Line, oh, it doesn't tell, oh, yes it does, line 5, okay. Region Manager, line 5 of the draw event. This does not say animation. Now it does. I probably did that somewhere else too, but cross your fingers that I didn't and that it works. Okay. Perfect. You change to a different region, and it does that. You go down, it drops down, and then it fades out. I think the delay and the fade, I think the delay needs to be a little longer, the fade is fine, and the drop down needs to be faster. And so to do that, all we have to do is change what we add to animation offset. So the drop down needs to be faster. So let's double it. Instead of adding 1 each time, we're going to add 2. The delay needs to be a little longer. So for that, where's the delay? Delay right here. All we have to do is increase this. So I'm just going to add a half a second to it. So 10 more steps. That's not a half a second. That's a half a second. 30 divided by 2, math. And then in the end, the fade was fine. So it should drop down twice as fast, and it should stay just a half a second longer. And I think that would be perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. So now the only thing is, I think this needs a background. What happens if I go back and forth? It just resets. Okay, good. One thing that's not resetting that I noticed, and I know exactly why, is I'm not resetting the animation offset. So if it's in the middle of an animation when you change regions, it doesn't reset the offset. So let's do that so that it starts over completely instead of resetting to the drop-down stage, but still using the same animation stage or animation offset. Yeah, that works better. 3, it drops down, it waits, it fades. Drops down, it waits, and it fades. Okay, so I think we need a background for this. I also think it's too far offset. So I'm going to cut this in half and make this 5. And then this will be 25, so it'll be 5 off instead of 10. So then this needs to be 5 and 5. And then this needs to be 5 and 5. But now I do need a background for it. So I think for a background for now, in the future I might use a nice graphic or something. But for now, we're just going to go simple and draw just a little box. So draw a rectangle. It'll be at x of 0, y of -20 plus animation offset -2. So it'll be 2 pixels above the text. To 10 plus string width region name. So it'll be the entire width of the name plus 10 pixels. So 5 on the left and 5 on the right for padding. And then y2 is -20 plus animation offset plus string height, so the height of the text, region name, and then plus another 2. and not an outline. But what we do want to do is set the color. So I'm just going to make this white, and then before I draw the text, set it back to black so the text is black. Color black. And I'm basically just going to copy this in each stage. Did I copy the text? No. This is right above the text. And I'm just going to set this instead to 0, 0. Oh, but it's 5 pixels off the top. All right, so I'm going to change one thing in a second, but first, x2 is still that, and y2 is still going to be, it's going to be 2 pixels off the top instead of 5. So that's 2, 4 plus string height. The last parameter, by the way, is true or false. I just use 0 and 1, but it's whether it's an outline or the entire thing. So false is the entire thing, including the background. So this is all fine. All I'm going to do is I'm going to redo that to be 2 pixels off the top instead of 5. Just because I feel like 5 pixels might be too much space, especially with a box in the background. I feel like it's going to look ugly, which means this needs to be 22. And yeah, I believe this would work. So negative 20 plus 22 is 2 pixels off the top, and then negative 20 plus 22 minus 2 is 0. So that's perfect. Which means I should be able to say OK, and now we should have a white background behind our region text. And I think if this works, this will be the end of the episode because that's all our region data done. So let's see. Yep. And then it should fade. And if I go into region 0, there it is. I think I moved the mouse too fast and skipped it, but the player won't be able to do that because the player is not going to be able to, move fast enough to skip over stuff. Region 0, region 3, region 0, region 3. Yep, and like I said, that white box will pretend. Did that move? Region 0. It does. Uh-oh. It moves down in the second or third stage, which means I just forgot to change a 5 to a 2 when I changed the height. So, yep, right here. 2. All right, now let's test it. But yeah, like I said, in the future, that white box will probably turn into a graphic or something that we'll draw. But for now, it works fine. And because we know that it's getting the name correctly, and we know that it's getting the name from this region map, we also know that it will get the correct wild battles because it's getting it from the same place, just a different key. So yeah, everything is good to go with our regions. Our regions are done. I don't know, this is a 50, yep, we're just about at an hour, which seems to be the length of our videos. So yeah, as always, if you want to help develop this game, if you are an artist and you can make either fake Pokemon or tiles or player characters, whatever kind of graphics, if you can make graphics and you're an artist and you want to help, please in the comments below or on the Reddit topics, or I now have a topic in the PokeCommunity forums. I'll try to remember to put all those links down below. Anywhere you can, just please submit any of your art and it would be in the game and you would have credit for building a Pokemon game. So yeah, I'd appreciate it. So until next time, keep developing and keep catching them all.